Welcome to the September 8th facilities meeting. Sitting around the table are board members Kyle McKessie, Ed Tate, Wendy Thomas, Denise Brooks, Dr. Foster, Superintendent Frazier, Matt Fredrickson, and Doug Taylor. And also Mark Bialik is in the building and will be back shortly. Mr. Taylor.
All right, thank you, good evening. The agenda tonight, while it is noted as an hour, should be a pretty quick meeting, unless there's a lot of questions, comments, concerns. As long as it needs to be, it's fine with me, but I'm going to move it along at the pace that you wish. So we're going to go over energy performance update, facilities improvement update, the 2 middle school projects, capital improvement projects update, some miscellaneous information, service supply bid update, professional service proposal, donations, and then any public comment. Right now, there is no public at the meeting, but that could change. Energy management update. So there's been a little bit of a change to the baseline Energy Star score and the current Energy Star score and gross per square foot cost based upon the footnote. So we've taken Holland Elementary School, Goodnell Elementary School, and Churchville, and the baselines have been reset to 2015. Since they were renovated, we never went back and reset those baselines. So we went back, took a look at those. Soul Finestone has also been updated, and we removed Holland Middle School and Newtown Middle School while they're being renovated because they just simply won't perform as well as they normally would otherwise. You could say, well, why Newtown? We actually utilize power from the building for construction, water, so it power more so with us. We're not really monitoring water as part of this. But as we've done this, so the baseline energy score was 86. Our new baseline is 80. The current Energy Star score is a 79. It was once an 81. The cost per square foot was 97 cents per square foot. We're at 94 cents per square foot. Right now.
And that's per square foot per
For the entire, all of the schools combined.
per year, per month, or
It's the cost per square foot per month.
per month.
The measuring period.
Right.
Can I ask a question or no?
Sure.
I'm sorry, so you might have said this wrong, I apologize. The cost is down 3 cents, that's what that's saying,
That's right. That's
correct?
Yes.
Is that because we're using less or because the price is down?
There's a couple of variables. One is we've taken 2 schools out, taken Newtown and Holland out
Because they're
because
under
of the
construction,
construction.
got it, okay. So that, they were higher than that, so that impacted it?
They were, because of construction, we're using a lot of additional power
Got
in
it.
Holland, and we're using power that we have in Newtown.
I know I took them out, but did it make it drop? So when we put them back in, should we expect it to go
When
back
we
up?
put them back in, we should be very close to where we are without them based on the way that they're going to perform as LEED Gold facilities. I would
Okay.
expect, and as we continue to improve other facilities through retro commissioning.
But just looking at the money doesn't mean we're actually doing better in our energy use.
We're doing well. I mean, we were closer to $1 6 months ago before we started the retro commissioning, so we have come down. The adjustment from 97 cents to 94 cents, we'll have to see where that ends up.
So I don't need it for this one, but in the future, I would like to know how much the price came down and how much we're using less, you know what I mean? Because if we're using more but the price goes down, that means something different to me than the price went up and we're using less and we still went down,
I understand.
Are you looking to see if we're changing behaviors?
Yes. I'm trying to say, I don't think we've spent an enormous amount of energy focusing on this for a couple of years, and I think everybody agrees that you can only focus on so many things. But just looking at this, I don't know what to read from it. So I'm just trying to understand it, because at some point, we may want to go back to focusing some behavior change on it, maybe not.
And we are, and that's something that
Okay.
I'm working on more closely with Aaron Mark as we move forward.
Well, that's good, so we want to see that, but if I only see dollars,
Sure,
I'm not sure.
I understand.
I mean, is it electric or gas and electric combined?
It's electric.
It's just electric.
It is, yes.
And so when we start running the chillers and the air conditioners, then on these hot months, that the electric, that price per square foot will go up just because there's air conditioning.
This is, yeah, because this is still back, it's always several months back from where we are.
Right.
It's weather adjusted though, so we'll see what, where the numbers shake out.
Okay.
We have had, with the retro commissioning, we found some things that were simply, running 24/7, some other, we had some chillers that were short cycling, so, we found some things that definitely were costing us in energy. Holland in particular, we actually have engaged Johnson Controls, who did the project originally for us. They're putting their heads together to come back and figure out what we need to do from a control standpoint to get some of those systems where they should be based on the design parameters. I can actually move into that. Goodnow Elementary School is another that when we finished the project, we noted that we had concern for high humidity in the building. So we've gone back and we had a meeting the other day and we're still experiencing some of that. So we've asked the design team to come back around the table and help us determine how we're going to fix this. We basically said, hey, we're not relieving you of fixing this, we're going to go another summer. We ran out of hot, humid days last year to see if anything was better or not, and we really haven't corrected it. Now, they're Airedale unit ventilators. They're not my favorite systems. They're dual ducted systems, and we have outside air coming in. But as we looked at the units, some of the structure, the cabinet components of that, were the outside air, and some of the other return mix don't have clean, solid sound separation between those, so there could be some issues with the unit. It could be with the installation from the contractor. So we're following up to see what's happening there. Also, Siemens Controls is at that project, and we own multiple zones, multiple building management system schemes to go into the building, and they weren't all fully programmed the way they needed to be. They came back, they made some changes, but they're still not where they need to be. So we're regrouping with the design team as well on that project to figure that out. Now, in saying that, those are two newer projects, and you say, well, why is this happening? And I asked the same thing, because we had testing, adjusting, balancing, agent, a third party, we had people on board to assist, and I'm frustrated that we have to sit around the table a year later and say, how do we get these systems working? And it just seems to be any project you work on, the systems are so challenged, they've come so far, and they're so technical that it's difficult for any operator to understand how all of it works. With the two middle school projects, we have Aramark engaged. They're overseeing that. They're our commissioning agent. We have an enhanced commissioning because of League Gold. So I feel much better there, and I will not release any final payments to any mechanical contractors until we have flushed all this out to make sure that everything is exactly where it needs to be. These two projects. So
when you say these two, you mean Goodnow? Or you mean these next two, the middle schools?
The middle schools, but Goodnow, we still have the support from the design team to come back and help us work on it. They recently asked for a meeting. They've reached out to the design.
But they've received all their payments. They're just doing it.
They've received their payments, but they are, as professionals, have agreed to come back and help us resolve what the problems are. Now, we need to see what the issues are, what the cost impact of those are, and then we'll have other conversations. But as far as I'm concerned, we own the system that functions. It's the same engineer that did Holland Elementary School. It was, what did we go back and we added? It was Goodnow, Churchville. We had to go back and add some three-way valves and make some changes because we had some issues with the HVAC. It's the same engineer that we had there here. So we're going to see. And it's not the engineer, by the way, that's on the middle school. So different team.
But really the issue in Goodnow is limited to the humidity? Or?
It's primarily the issue there, and I'll come back to you next month with our findings because we're just working through all this as we went through the building this past week. It's primarily high humidity, and it's the percentage of outside, there's design parameters that you can set the system up for. They have like 70% outside air coming in. We have temperatures that we set based on our standards, and that mix is just not working the way it needs to be. We're getting warm air in the space. And then the question is, for dehumidification, you usually want to run boilers to dehumidify because you want to heat that cool air. But where the coil is in those units relative to where the heat loop is not really conducive to dehumidification. So we're trying to figure out what we need to do to make this work.
Well, thanks.
And then this is kind of some of the work we're still working through. Rolling Hills, some of the rooftop units, the controllers in those units. Understand this building is very old. These controllers are also very old, and you can't simply go in and get the equipment that lives in that building at this point. We have very old building management systems, so we're doing our best to make these function. We are fortunate to have a very talented HVAC specialist that works for us. Gary, who can go into these buildings and he can actually get into our programs, reprogram things, get into units, put equipment in, tie them together, type in new programs. He's very talented, and I'm glad that we have him on our team. He's doing his best to get around some of these things, but he's also running around dealing with everyday mechanical issues and things.
So your comments in blue, does that mean that the reason that it's less than 76 degrees is that someone in the building is moving it, adjusting the thermostat less than that, and we have no way to have overall control over it? Am I reading that correctly?
No, it's actually it's the communication between the thermostat and the controller in the unit. It's not people. It's actually equipment from the thermostat on the wall that talks to the unit on the roof.
Okay.
And it just can't speak to it the way it needs to control it. So, and some of these buildings have pneumatic controls with, digital. We all know digital today. It's all electronic. But the pneumatic controls, you want a compressor. It's all air lines. You fill those lines with air. The compressor runs to fill them with air, and it's pneumatic control. So it operates controllers through air, release of air, and those lines running throughout the building get old, get brittle. The compressor runs more and more because they leak. And at some point, they just stop functioning because they're tired. To try to go back to an old building and put all new air lines in for a compressor and pneumatics is just, the cost, you could digital controls at some point. But this is Rolling Hills, and it's one of the buildings that we're saying, hey, let's wait to see what happens long-term with master planning, then we'll figure out, long-term projects for that building.
Two little questions, Doug. One is, are the two new middle schools going to be so much of an improvement that they'll really impact our numbers? And the other is, how's the school year begun in terms of its heat in the buildings?
Yeah, well, buildings that are air conditioned are fine. Those that aren't are definitely, warm. There are a handful of buildings that.
Which buildings were they?
There's Richboro L, Sulphidestone,
Newtown Middle.
Wrightstown,
Hillcrest.
and Hillcrest are the elementary
Newtown
schools.
Middle? Newtown Middle?
Newtown Middle does have air.
It does, really?
Not in the auditorium. I was supposed all night last night.
There are spaces, there are select spaces that may not have
It's not efficient.
primarily, but it probably does, Andy, it just can't keep up or there was an issue.
Twice a year, that's the only time I get 75 emails from my wife and her friends.
In Newtown Middle, the classrooms all did.
Yeah, no, I know it's more true.
But there were
Yeah, I was
some,
just focused on
some spaces
elementary,
that-
yeah.
Gotcha. Do you think the middle school kids can handle it? That's what it is.
I think they can. I grew up without air conditioning, so
It doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. All right, doesn't matter.
I'll feel both ways.
Hollindale, as I said, we have Johnson Controls putting their heads together to come back to work on addressing a lot of the issues we have there. So I'll come back to you with energy updates next month. Facilities update on Newtown Middle School, Holland Middle School. The land development agreements have been prepared by both municipalities. The Newtown land development agreement is being processed. The Northampton Township land development agreement is not finalized. Our solicitor is still working with the township solicitor to get that language tweaked. Once it is, we can then process that agreement. That was originally approved as subject to solicitor review until it's to the point where they're satisfied. We won't have Andy sign. Yes.
Approved by us, subject to solicitor review.
It was approved by us.
Okay.
It hasn't been finalized, signed, and processed at this point. We're still waiting for their solicitor to work with Eastburn and Gray to get it where we all need.
Did we ever have settlement on the land swap?
I'm sorry?
Did we ever have settlement with Northampton on the land swap?
No, we hadn't brought that back yet for processing to the board. There's still one more piece of that, so that's.
Kind of holding that as leverage, right? Or not leverage is the wrong word, but
I
holding
don't
that
think they
to,
want it.
I don't know that they've approached us on that
Right.
piece yet. I think that they were aware that there was a piece hanging out there. Pliget agreements are being finalized. There's financial security, Newtown Township and Northampton Township. Pliget agreements have been forwarded to the business office for processing. So we're waiting for those to be taken care of. And building permits, at this point, waiting for both municipalities for the word that the permits are ready for us to come deliver a check and pick those up. So haven't heard anything on those yet. I'm sure at Northampton, until we have the land development agreement process, there wouldn't be a permit. Newtown Township is much closer. We should be seeing something from them in the near future. Last night, we had a community presentation and update for Holland Middle School. There was a back-to-school night about an hour before the back-to-school night. A representative from Dewey and myself and Rich Hallahan presented to them the status of the project, where we are with phasing, and addressed any questions or concerns that the community had relative to what's happening in the building, the interface with students, the construction, and how that affects things. Circulation, getting to the school, anything that was on their mind, we were there to answer. The meeting went very well.
Did you have a good turnout?
We had about 25 people initially, and then as our meeting went on, back to school night, folks started to come in, so it ended with a really big room full of people. But,
were there any big themes that came up?
no, I think the biggest, question was, hey, we understand there is some background noise adjacent to classrooms. How will that affect testing? What will happen if that gets too noisy? And we explained that the Dewey representative and Rich speak every single day. If there's anything that's happening on the other side of a wall, which is, drywall each side, insulation, pretty sound partition. But if there are issues, our representative will go to the contractors and let them know that whatever it is has to cease until such time that class is finished. If there are any sensitive tests and there's something happening, and you can't move the test to a different room, we would certainly ask the contractors to wait. We haven't really experienced any major issues. Most of the big noise generating things happen over the summer or on weekends or evenings or, the way it was phased. The bigger things are kind of finished. But if any of those things happen, then we work together to resolve it. But there really wasn't any lengthy discussion about any of those kind of things. I thought it went well.
There will be more bigger things again later as you get into additional phases.
There will, and a lot of those things like cutting a lot of those are phased over. The next piece of construction turns over in January, so they'll be starting, pieces in a January to summer phase, the next one, and then the next phase is more favorable summer into the winter again. So there will be a lot of the preparation work to get there has been taken care of. Tearing down the exterior wall and putting up a new wall has happened where there's classrooms behind it. We took a 2-foot piece of the interior room, built a wall inside, and built that wall so that when we move to that next phase, we won't have to worry about the noise of tearing off the facade and building the walls. So we've done some things the best we could. The big pieces where you cut the large opening in the floor to put in that learning stair, collaborative space, that's a summer phase. So we try to take the things that are really big and substantial and phase those over summers. So we'll work, it's community, we'll work together, and the contractors have been really good at working with us, so.
I gotta say, driving by that building and seeing windows, it was like, I had like an emotional reaction to it.
It's
It was
really
like,
nice.
oh my gosh.
They feel good.
So, I mean, it looks great, but it helps give a visual about like how great it's gonna be.
Yeah.
What can you tell about the park, the pickup issue at Newtown Middle? I heard like after sports or something, there was some,
Yeah, so the issue with sports initially on, I know day one, was pretty messy, because I think traffic backed up onto Richboro Road.
Right.
You could pull in, go around the loop, pick up kids, but it backed up all the way onto the street. The parking lot with 100 and some spaces was empty. So what we need to do, and I believe that Tim Long was going to get someone out there to help control traffic, is to help steer parents into the area that you can park, and then tell your child, hey, come on out, I'm on the left side, the right side, I'm near a light, or wherever I am, come get me.
and they
There's plenty of
staggered
room to
times,
stage in
right?
there.
And they staggered sometimes.
I think they were working on
Dismissals are
staggering
two
times. I
different-
don't know what the final solution was, but I know that between Barry and Tim Long, they were working on a solution for that.
Okay, so as far as we know, it's improving?
I have not heard of any major issues since then. Robert, have you heard?
I didn't get an update today.
I didn't go out to see.
That was their plan, to also
Yeah.
stagger time.
I feel like part of the problem there is you were starting at such a deficit. I mean, that's been a nightmare for years, so if that's your starting point,
Yeah,
and that's all you can get back to, and we've added this to it, it's,
I think there's a 5 o'clock element to it with the sports piece, and then the question that's out there, and I haven't looked at Tim's emails, but I know he's addressing it, is why can't we pick kids up over
On
at,
site.
over in Newtown? And then I got hit at the knack today by three folks.
yeah, I got that as well.
Well,
It's one
I
of
saw,
those things,
yeah.
we're responsible for their kids till we're not, right? So we gotta
exactly.
do what we gotta do. They gotta live with it.
He did communicate that he'll continue to evaluate that particular aspect, but for the time being, we're committed to trying to make this work.
Yep.
So hopefully it gets better, as many things do.
Yeah, well, it's, you're gonna have things like this to deal with when you build a new school.
Yep,
And that's-
exactly.
You have to go through it.
I
Hopefully,
think eventually it becomes a more, new normal until it's new, it's fresh, so sometimes it takes a little bit of time.
yeah.
But as Robert said, we continue to evaluate it, so. I'll follow up with them to see what's happened to these, so I can get you an update on that. From a schedule standpoint, Newtown is basically has met all of the timelines initially from a site work standpoint that they needed to. The June to August work is all in place. They've done everything that they needed to do in that phase. The August to June pieces have all been addressed. They have the baseball field in place. They're working on the bus loop piece of things up on the top of the site. They kind of have the staging for what will be the new drop off in the future, but they've worked the temporary paving around here for the summer, for the regular school year. So we're in good shape. So work continues on the new building path, basically for the next 2 years as we build the building.
Have you removed the memorial trees yet?
No, they will be removed likely closer to when we're ready to demolish the building, so. Now, the memorial plaques that were near those trees, we have in Tim's office because we wanted to make sure that they didn't get damaged. So if you happen to go to the site looking for the plaque, it's inside, so it's safe. So just so you're aware, they didn't disappear, we're trying to keep them safe. This is the site as you know it. So what's happening there now, you saw Blair come in and tear the site apart and get us to a point where we're ready for a building. It feels slow, but there's a whole lot of labor to get these footings in place and ready for structural steel to show up. So you can see some of the rebar that's put in. These are the leveling plates. These get put in so that when the steel columns come, we're ready to put the new columns base plate on top of those and go to town. Just some more of the base plates waiting for steel. This site at this point is basically all foundation work, all underground utility work. These are piers, new column footings, just a pier. There's the rebar that goes in the hole. Preparing for the new baseball field for sod and fencing, so the field has been established at the bottom of the site. Tower State Park wrapped around all sides of this, and they'll be actually sodding this fall to get it established in real good shape by the time we take it over.
You have the ability to water that regularly?
Yeah, that's what the contractor's working on. They want to get water down here so they can water the whole thing at one shot and keep it watered until it's fully established.
Are they gonna be able to do that through existing piping, or they have to use trucks to do that?
They're looking at what their options are. If they have to bring a water truck in and water it that way, they will. They don't want to waste their money on sod and have it die.
So it will be a long-term solution of where those fields will be fed.
There won't
But
be.
once it
irrigation.
sets there,
Right, but they own providing an established field to us
Got
before we take it over.
How are we gonna keep people off of the field while it's getting established?
This remains inside the fenced-in construction area, so it won't be open to community. We will at some point, when it's finished next year, have to come in and maintain it, until such time we're ready to use it. But it'll be an established field for sure when we turn the building over to us.
On the footings, how's the inspections been with the township?
Inspections have been fine. This is one site where the inspectors are coming in, they're checking in with Dewey Engineering and walking the site. The site inspector from CKS has been fantastic. He basically allocates a couple hours each day, comes in, in the afternoon, walks the site, and he's been friendly and good and helpful. So.
And that stuff we used to hear about, testing the concrete, well, is that part of the foundation as well?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that momentarily. Yeah.
Since we're talking about inspections, are they signing in and signing out like we asked them?
We are definitely doing so here at Newtown. The inspectors have been willing to sign the clipboard and do so.
Not at home?
Not so much at Howell.
Okay.
Not the same willingness. So nice segue though. This is our third-party construction testing. So we're checking air entrainment. We take cylinders of the concrete pours for 7, 14, 21, 28 day breaks and 56 if necessary. Checking the strength, making sure they meet the design mix. We've been a little challenged on this project in that to meet LEED certification, one of the things we're doing is using recycled materials. So there's fly ash that's actually in the concrete as recycled material. The air entrainment, which we put in any exterior concrete, which actually provides small air bubbles in the concrete so that there's room for expansion. It's what freeze thaw. You want to do that to exterior sidewalks, any concrete that's exposed to the elements. We were coming up with strengths that weren't meeting the design spec. And we have quality assurance, quality control. We have our team who's checking that and saying, hey, we have some concerns. We raised a red flag. The Sylvie, the folks providing the concrete, said, hey, let's get together and resolve this. We don't want issues with miles and miles of footing. So last thing we want to do is put in footings and take them back out. So there was a meeting about 2 weeks ago. Sylvie engaged their own construction testing agent. They are actually performing the same test we would at their site, testing the concrete, the temperature, the air entrainment, the slump, before it even gets to us to make sure that it is compliant. And then it gets to us, and we do the same thing with our people. And in the last 2 weeks, everything has really kind of resolved itself. But we do have some footings in place where the test reports, after it's placed, you have a 7-day test, and it's not showing us that it's the strength that we need it to be from a code standpoint. So we had Windsor Probe test performed. It's a method to come in and make sure that this concrete that's in place does in fact comply. So they shoot in an anchor that is a certain depth anchor based on a certain PSI that they, certain force that they put in the concrete. Based on it, there's calculations to determine, after the stud is in, how much still projects beyond the concrete and how much should, to determine what the compressive strength of the concrete is. So they've done this, they take 4 in a certain distance, and they take the average of those 4 and see if in fact it has met the strength. They have done so, and the couple pieces that we were worried about did in fact exceed the compressive strength that we were looking for. Now, the structural engineer who ultimately has to sign off on this is still watching those couple areas closely. Structural steel isn't scheduled to be here until the 19th of October, so there's plenty of time to address those couple areas that we've identified as concerning. But the quality control, quality assurance is taking place. And this is an example of, a piece of that we're watching.
The structural engineer, you're just gonna have these tests at later dates, once it's secured more and see.
And the structural engineer actually may want to come back here in addition to these, actually take cores of the concrete and then go do breaks of those cores like they would have in the other cylinders.
Yeah.
So he may want to come back and take a couple
But it
cores.
sounds so, obviously we're burned about the complexity of the stuff that was at Marine Welsh. And so when you talk about the air entrainment, and that's with respect to weather resistance, but then there's this completely different parameter, the compressive strength. And so as we're doing this, are we keeping an eye on both of them somehow?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're keeping an eye on all of it, and everything is reviewed by several sets of eyes. So now the concrete company is in tune with it. They recognize, and
Because it's such a pain. I mean, you can see the incentives could line up for people to say, well, it's close enough. But it's
we could say,
important.
we won't say that. We have 3 sets of engineers now looking at it, so this is going to be probably better than footings for almost any other building.
I'm sure we all feel that you hope you feel empowered to say no.
Well,
That there's no pressure for you to.
no, there's not. I mean, if this is, reveals that it's problematic, it would come out and they put new footings in, and people recognize that, which is why they took it seriously. So I don't foresee that happening, but we're not at a point where it's so low that it's not going to come up to strength. But we wanted to make sure. So everyone took it seriously. The contractor responded to our concerns, and it's all been a positive experience out of something negative. Holland Middle School, again, all of those site activities that they needed to accomplish have happened. They are on or ahead of schedule in almost every activity, with the exception of one small area, which I'll touch on, but we'll be in good shape by Monday. From a site standpoint, everything May through June, they did take care of that was necessary. June through August, the same. It was very, very tight, getting the parking lot in, the sidewalks in, and everything ready for the start of school. But everybody did come through as promised. So you're aware, we have Buck Road angling up here, East Holland Road that ultimately intersects it up in the corner. We do have concrete sidewalk that comes in the site across, and then a temporary walkway in and to our new temporary entry into the building, so student walkers have a safe way to get into the building. From the south, the existing walkway that comes up to the bottom has been extended around, and there's another safe way for walkers to get in.
So the old entrance isn't used at all?
I'm sorry?
The old entrance isn't being used at all now?
The old entrance is gone. There was the entrance to the gym area in here, but that's all been demolished and shut down. So they're using the hallway that runs along the music rooms. That's the new entry for
Okay.
student drop off and walkers coming in the morning. Buses are still dropping off at the old, what was the main entrance. It was supposed to feel like one. So from a site standpoint, we have a parking lot in this area that's been turned over to us. Still utilizing all the parking lot out in front of the building or the side, how we look at it, and the parking lot where the buses drop off. So all of that's available to us. There will be more parking in this area down the road. We're allowing them to use that for staging as they construct the auditorium. They'll have cranes, they'll need to swing steel. So this is working out well for us and for them. So the one piece that we have experienced a little bit of challenge with is the tech ed space, the very first piece that needed to be complete at the start of school. It really came down to the procurement of materials. The last piece that we needed was the dust collection system. It came 2 days ago. It's installed. They're working on finalizing the ductwork. All the equipment's in place. The room will be ready for student use on Monday. So the concern with that first phase was always, can we get the equipment quick enough? I think everybody gave it a shot. In saying that, I did give the HVAC contractor a little bit of a hard time relative to what's happened here. Let them know my discontent, and that it certainly can't happen down the road. However, I don't think it will. They're well ahead in the next phase of construction, and materials are coming in regularly now.
What was the effect of the kids on site?
So it affects the kids in that it's a 6-week program, and I don't know if it's half or a little less than half is some's lab, some's over in the shop using the equipment. They are working in a computer lab, and they have been since they started, so they're still doing the same thing in that regard. They haven't been able to get their hands on, saws and things like that, but now, come next week, they'll be able to do that, and they still have half of their program left. So I let the contractors know that that's what these things mean. This isn't about us missing a time and it's only one more week. If these were your children that couldn't take a program, how would you feel? It's about the kids. They get it. They understand. I think that we won't have this issue down the road.
What's the remedy if we do? I mean, is there a?
Well, yeah, the remedies are, we do have strong teeth in front of our documents. We do have, penalties for missing timelines and things like that. So I think the first phase, procuring materials, the tight timeline, gives them a little bit of defense on their side, but down the road, I think they have little to no defense. There's ample time for them to meet all of the timelines, so.
Do the kids that may not have access to these labs, do they have an opportunity to have it again throughout the year? No?
It's a rotate, every 6 weeks they rotate, but it's not like the whole school. I mean, it's just a small segment, because 1/6 they're getting this.
It's not.
No, it's absolutely significant, but they don't go back to it because they're moving to the next rotation.
Everything else is moving along. I won't go through all of the phases. The classroom piece that needs to finish the end of December for the move between the holiday break is moving along very well. I'll show you a couple of shots of that as we get past. I'll continue to update all of these pieces as we move further down the road. So we are renovating this pink piece of the project right now, floor above, floor below, and constructing the classrooms in this area. And the foundations have started for the auditorium over here. The existing locker rooms have been demolished. The old entry is no longer available, but students are coming in the hallway along the music room between it and the cafeteria kitchen. So we still have an access into the building this way. This is the upper level. That piece here is also being worked on. So we work on sandwich kind of pieces as we go through the building. The site, as you know it or knew it before we started, this is the locker room. We were down to one side of the building for the locker rooms. We basically said, hey, we're going to divide this locker room and have 1/2 boys, 1/2 girls. We've done that. We constructed a partition. The office is big enough for the PE teachers to share. We created a separation in the office as well, a door. Worked with the PE instructors so everybody's in good shape. And I think we're adding one extra DAG drop so we can get a computer in there. You may or may not know that, but we're working on that.
So when you do those, I mean, it sounds a little ad hoc. I mean, maybe there's a plan that you're kind of looking, you're putting up a wall, you're putting in drops, so that you're working with a contractor kind of in a flexible way, and then that LNI people in a flexible way.
So I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
So it sounded like, you showed the locker rooms, you showed this dotted line. It sounded like this has embedded those changes to enable construction more staging related instead of permanent building related. They seem to be a little more fluid. So, you don't have to submit drawings and plans like months and months ahead of time.
No, our original planning shows phasing plans, which show that during this month, those temporary partitions have to be put in place. We then show how we will
So it was all
provide emergency egress.
It was all
It's all
predetermined.
pre-planned. Yeah, so we have a pretty good roadmap on how we're going to continue to work around this building moving down the road. And as we go through each phase, how we're going to safely get kids out of the building in the event of an emergency. So we've created some stairs that we still keep in separate partitions for egress to Blue Sky, even though they're working on another side of the partition, like, carved out little fire hallways to do that in case there's an emergency. So we are, and we have the fire marshal does come in and take a look as we do things. This is the new tech ed space, looking into the computer lab portion of it. See, we have lots of daylight in this area. This is the computer lab. We've added a high clear story window in the lab to get some daylight into that space as well. This is the old locker room area that is gone. You can see the existing piping that we need to tie into and the new pipe waiting for it. And ultimately they found each other and we made that connection. We will be videoing all of the existing lines before we are sure that that's what we want to own at the end before we put new building over it. Right now, we believe these lines are in pretty good shape, but we'll make a decision when they demolish the rest of that floor out if we want to consider replacing that segment or keep what's there depending on the condition. So we were sweating out getting this parking lot done and ready for the kids. The nice thing about it, what really helped expedite it, is that we used a curved machine, so they put up guide rails. They make sure that the earth around it is level and ready. They bring in a curved machine, it's filled with concrete, and it places concrete in a curved shape as it drives along and follows the rails. All of the internal curves are formed by a curved machine, which was very helpful, because they're all done by this machine. So it saved all of the form work that you would have to set up, and really did a nice job.
If you've ever formed and poured concrete, that's awesome.
It is. I have carried forms around.
Me too.
They're heavy.
And they blow out.
And it's,
They
You're unhappy.
and coating everything with oil. And,
Concrete burns you.
it does. So then we got the stone out. We rolled the stone, but we have a vibratory roller to make sure we meet the compaction. Have it ready to go. Reinforcing in the sidewalks. These are nice 8-foot wide sidewalks internally to allow groups of kids to walk, talking to one another as they walk along without jumping out onto a curb as they walk along internally. Sidewalks in place. The sight light bases are going in, so they're drilling the holes for those. Those are the sight light bases, the conduits in place beneath the stone. We're waiting for the sight lights to come. That's another procurement issue. Once all the lights come, we'll be in great shape. Started paving and have paved. This is just the base course of paving, so this is not the finished course that we have to worry about damaging as they continue to drive around this and use it. Ultimately, this gets another 1.5 inches of wearing on it when the project's done. We'll do that all at the end of the project.
so how long does the base coat stay for?
I'm sorry?
How long do you keep the base there for?
The base will be there, that's forever. So that's.
No, I mean, before you top it, what's the time? Because you want it to settle, right? Don't you?
No, because we actually, they'll roll it and meet the, we'll check the density and make sure that it's the thickness that we own, and we'll make sure that it's the density that we need. They can overlay it quickly after that. They'll put a tack coat down and overlay it. But the nice thing about this is, as you say, if something isn't as tight as we had hoped that it was, even though we believe it is, and we start to see any kind of soft spots, we can address those and then come back and top it later. So this gives us a nice chance to see it all over the next year or two. Before we
Okay, so it's a couple.
I'm sorry. So it'll be 2 years before we pay it. I'm sorry. Now, this area is one area where we do have a conflict. I'm going to show you a picture of that shortly, but you'll see some cones here, a piece of curb that's left, and you'll see our new curb that's curling around here. And you wonder why it isn't finished. We actually own a concrete pork chop, they're called, in this area. So it comes down and kind of curls over to define a right turn lane. And then it defines a left turn or a straight. So you'll be able to turn right, straight, or left with 3 lanes coming out. The problem is the telephone pole is within our driveway. It's just a minor problem. So review that with you shortly so you see what's happening there. Internally, we have walkways for the kids, in case you haven't seen it up close, existing islands, fencing where the construction is separated from us. Students walk safely between here, across on a crosswalk and then into the building. This is the excavation for the trail around the back of the site, if you haven't been back there. Our new trail is much better, that this is temporary, but much better than what lives there today. You may have seen Jerry's questions about, well, why can we tie into essentially nothing? This is the existing walkway. It was about a 2-foot wide paved path. It has grass growing in cracks, but that is the existing pathway we connected to. At the end of the project, we will be overlaying all of the existing walkway 4 foot wide with new asphalt.
Walkway for what?
At the bottom of our property, there's a sidewalk that ties into a neighboring development.
Oh, so kids walk up through.
They walk us through here. And they
Athletic fields,
also,
right?
yeah, they walk around, yeah, and it gets you to the athletic fields, baseball and soccer.
And in that neighborhood, that allows kids to.
And kids also come from the bottom of the site, across the grass field, come here and then come up. So there's ways for kids to come in different directions. We actually walked that with a bunch of neighbors one day. Rich and I and Mike Filbert had got to know some neighbors and see how kids actually travel, and it was helpful for us, so we knew how to prepare.
So you're gonna pave that whole way instead of concrete because of the cost?
Yeah, yeah, but it'll be 4 feet wide up and all the way down, and we own 4 foot wide of topsoil and feathering on each side, so we don't create a high curb for kids, falling off the edge of it. So we'll make sure that we tie it feathered into the site. Laying out the footings, we have all of the stone compacted, all of the backfill taken care of, the micro piers are in place that we talked about. They excavate the stone, putting the reinforcing in. These are the micro piers, they go down about 20 feet. They tie into suitable soils at the bottom, and our footings will come across, sit on top of those. Rebars will come out of these into our new footings, and it provides a substantial support of our foundations up against the existing building, instead of excavating 20 feet down and compromising, undermining the existing building to get to suitable soil. So we had some soft soil along the edge. These, from a design standpoint, allowed us to do this in the most cost-effective way. And they're working away. You can see the footings are poured over in that area, and they continue to work their way around, setting these are for piers, these are for the future columns. This is the classroom addition off the side of the building. They're excavating. Foundations are in. We have spec mix buckets ready to go, so they can actually prepare the mortar. They're going to start laying the base course of block for the foundation. You can see that they're staging for that. Some of the windows that Denise was talking about. This is a very large, long infiltration basin that's been constructed at the bottom of the site. You can't quite see from the street, but it's very long. It's been backfilled. Water will fill these pipes and slowly infiltrate into the ground. Some will run off into a rainwater garden around the corner.
So the wrapping is just to prevent weeds, or?
It's all in stone, and then they wrap the fabric over to keep the stone clean, so the
Right.
soils don't.
And eventually the wrapping will degrade over some.
Now, the wrapping should last 30 years.
You just made that up.
Go back and check it.
You just made that up.
Something like 30 years.
Someone will make it up.
This is the pole that I mentioned that is clearly in our way. We're working with PICO to try to get a job ticket in to have the pole moved. The challenge with that pole is that it has lots of stuff on top of it. Each one of these represent different utility providers, so you have to work with each and every one of those to have those lines moved. Will likely be, could be $20,000, $30,000 issue. Just making you aware that that's coming down the road at some point. So,
And those cones are doing what they need to do to prevent people from going that way.
right, we're looking at getting the concrete Jersey barriers. We're gonna put those in here to protect this. In the meantime, I've asked them to paint this bright yellow to minimize the risk of somebody ripping out the bottom of a car. But we're working on getting something more substantial there. So the other thing that we need to still consider, I know we talked about this, are the potential name changes of these facilities. There was discussion about having that by the beginning of the new year. I'm not sure if there's been any movement or work on that, but just a reminder that that's something that we need to keep thinking about and working on. Capital improvements update. The projects basically for the summer have wrapped up. They were all successful projects. I'm bringing to the board credit change orders for unused material allowances. There'll be a memo you'll receive tomorrow that explains the detail of those costs and how they break out. We spent very little of the actual allowances that we had, so we're returning nearly everything, and in some cases additional. We took some credits for some of the work as we were moving forward, things we didn't do that we got the money back for. So as we go through these, there's another credit of almost $32,000 for it. And as we go through Richboro ceiling tile replacement, the emergency project did wrap up before kids came back. It was done about a week and a half. There was a small allowance in that project in the event we had to replace some additional tile that we didn't plan for. We didn't use any of it, so all of that is also coming back to us. I'm blasting people with this laser, I'm sorry.
What's the status of the insurance issue with that?
I think we received a good bit of the money. We have to get them the final tally. We have it now that we've resolved the final cost with the credit for the allowance, plus some of the hours that we spent readying the spaces for the ceiling work. So we tallied our additional labor hours for us to come in, remove furniture, allow the contractor to work, put furniture back. So all of that's going to be sent in. We'll see how much more we get from them once they receive it. But I know we did receive a pretty good bit of it already.
You can charge insurance for staff time or internal time.
Yeah, they understood that. They said, I said, we're going to use our own force to move furniture to prepare for ceiling replacements and keep track of your hours.
Great.
They were, when I spoke with them, they were very helpful and seemed willing to work with us. So. Preparing the 16-17 capital plan, the book for distribution, and the presentation that I plan to present in October. So when I come back next month, that'll really be the presentation. We'll minimize everything else and just focus on it. Otherwise, summer work is in good shape. The final change orders will be in front of you next Thursday. One of the things I'm also working on.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
Is there a way, or is it easier for you? I mean, those books are really big with a ton of detail. Is there a way to where maybe you can summarize some of that to hit the kind of key pages, but have a full electronic version online? So you know how we flip through that, we kind of go, okay, what's the building summaries look like, and just to keep you from having to do.
I'm already working on the books.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you, but if we want to think about down the road changing that, we certainly.
I'm just thinking of the trees that we're killing and the time that it's taking you guys to do that.
Yeah.
What is
Versus summary.
If you make it electronic, you can search.
Yeah.
So you can go back in and search the
It
whole
is
document.
difficult, I mean,
We
for
said
what it's
electronic
worth,
is PDF version, is that what you're looking for?
but for what it's worth, I want you to know that I use that book. And for
I do
me,
too.
a lot of
I
times I
actually
want
use
like
it.
things side by
Compare.
side, and so it would be a lot harder to use that on the computer, but
I agree with that part of it. I just don't know if I use it, all the parts of it in.
yeah, that's fair.
That's, I would print a piece and maybe do a comparison, but I don't know.
Right, but I mean,
There's a security level. I'm old school to knowing it's right there. I can pull it out and open stuff. So, but I do know that we've started to do stuff where, and one of the advantage there is I do find sometimes I go in there and I'm looking through different sections so I find what I'm looking for, and they're well marked. The search function in electronic book is actually sometimes easier. Yeah.
We'll see how we can change it down the
Are you at
road.
least printing on both sides of the paper now?
I don't like to do that. I mean, I can, but I like to have a page for each, you know. We can look at that.
We'll leave that for you guys to figure out.
There's a lot of information in there, and I've added some information this year and trying to get some more representative photos of some of the things that are bigger challenges, and trying to do a couple more things that we didn't do before this. In addition to the renewal projects, non-renewal and renewal projects, things that aren't just capital plans, but some other projects that we should potentially consider the cost of those. I'm trying to give a bigger picture of where we are district-wide. So I'll think about how we can format that differently.
Yeah, just trying to make your life easier at the end of the day,
Yeah.
typically, and everybody has a different use, but typically we zero in on, hey, we're gonna prioritize activities, what do they cost?
Okay.
So there's a project that, so most of these projects, you look at the buildings, you see how old they are, do they need a new roof, do we have cracking concrete, that kind of thing. So there was one project that 3 board members supported, and there were a couple, maybe 2 or 3, that said, well, you know, maybe someday after we do some kind of big analysis of our athletics program, maybe then. So, but I'd like to see the track at the middle school on there, the Holland Middle School, because that is a capital.
That's a capital
expense.
project, it's not a capital renewal project. It's not
But you
here's
just,
some money we need to reallocate, we
Right.
need to save to maintain facilities.
so, but you just said that you
So
were
that,
looking more.
but how many, I mean,
Right,
I guess I have to be cautious about what those projects look. The non-renewable projects I'm talking about are things like, the natatorium at North, the bleacher area. There's code issues, there's things that really wants to be a small project. We want to infill, the floor and steps up and down. We've had some folks that have tripped in there in the past. The railings are not code
so,
compliant.
but I'm looking at, I had a bunch of parents write me, standard public comment, say that their children are getting, you know, broken ankles, going on uneven grass. And so, like when you mentioned the tripping, I had the same kind of thought process. with
So
that.
I would have like North's track and a new all-weather surface on North's track because the track already exists. My question would be, what projects would I have? Add turf to South? Would I have tracks at each school? Would I have
I'm just
a
saying
stadium?
that, I'm just saying that
Like, how do I know where the pool at South?
because you have a school board. So you had 3 school board members that were interested in that specific project in Holland. And so the question is that enough to make it on your list? Or do you need 5 people to say, you know, I'm thinking about it? Because that list interacts with finance.
I'll let you guys
and
answer. I don't want to answer this question.
Should I interject there, Bill? And listen, I wanted to see the tracks.
Right.
We put it up for a vote. It was voted down.
But it wasn't
I don't-
voted down for forever. There were people that said, you know, I'd like to get back to that. Not right now. Let's open this school. So I was almost hearing it's in the body of work that the district should seriously consider. It wasn't like, no, I don't think so. No.
But are you asking for something that hasn't been done already? Because I think that we know based on what we saw, right? What it's gonna cost to do those, so the body of work that would slot into that book is done, we know it's there.
You just
At the
included it
point,
in the book.
that's a little redundant unless you got people that.
So not
If
limited
it's in the book and not in the plan, why make them do it?
Every other project that this board has 3 people that they want done at some building in the school. If we're gonna include every project that's on a wish list of 3 people on the board or more, then that's fine. But to pick a single project at a time, I completely disagree with that. I completely agree that this board has interest in the future, but it doesn't belong in a recurring book of how we keep properties up to date. It belongs in a wish list of projects that we want to do at some point.
But the work's done, which is good, so it's not necessarily worth discussing unless we want to have the discussion about whether we want to do it or not.
Well, I mean, I don't think it was just 3 people. 3 people were interested now. I believe it may have been, I'd have to go back to it, it could have been 9 people who said, I don't want it off the table forever, we'll think about it. So I think there was consensus for a track in spirit. So I don't know that it's the same for the other things, we've never really talked about them.
Right, agreed.
So, it is in the context of the 3, I disagree with, because the 3 was for support to do it right now. If we go back and review that, my recollection is that nobody said they were absolutely opposed to that. So, to me, it seems not all that controversial to just have it in the list with the other stuff.
I would obviously prepare a book to the board's liking. I just want the board to tell me as a group how you want it done.
Well, like, I think to Wendy's point, you almost need a second area for a wish list, because that's really what it is. So, if we want to put our wish list in the book.
Then I guess you guys can share with me what that list is. So I don't want to make the wish list.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't exist. And I discussed it with Dr. Fraser recently, and the 2 gentlemen who've taken over as athletic directors had very, very long to-do lists. So the to-do lists come before the wish lists.
I haven't spoken to them about those lists either.
And that was my point in our last discussion, to discuss one-off athletic projects out of context without a master plan for athletic facilities, to me, is not responsible.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm not even aware that the athletic directors of the high schools have any, do they control the athletics in the middle schools? Isn't that a separate thing? I'm not sure. If the athletic directors.
No, you're correct, but if we're looking at a master plan for athletics and thus athletic facilities, then that's largely going to be driven by our high school athletic directors in concert with our middle school staff.
Yeah, and if we want to have the middle school athletic directors at the table as well, that's smart.
Certainly. The bigger piece here, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, the context of this booklet that we're talking about here is exclusively existing infrastructure that we already have.
Yes.
As opposed to something that we don't have, and perhaps we would have created for however many individuals that would like to have it. That I think is the rub with this. And my suggestion to the board would be, in the context of this particular book, that we avoid this. It's not the purpose of this. It's not the context for this. If we want to create a wish list or come up with a better terminology for this, that's perfectly fine for us to do that. But in the context of this particular book and next month's facilities committee meeting, I don't think it's the time or the place or the context for it, because we're talking about our existing assets, keeping those assets up to date, renewed, safe for students, safe for adults, etc. That's always been the purpose of this. It's still the purpose for this. And this just doesn't fit that particular context.
So I'm going to keep moving, and I'll wait to hear back if there's anything that comes my way. Professional services for the summer work has been, the last 3 years has been GKO Architects. They've done a good job for us. We have Reza working here, Dewey, GKO has been working, Schrader. The 3 years has passed, so I have proposals out for capital improvement projects to help us with those each summer. It's usually a sliding scale fee structure, back out in the streets. So I'll wait for prices from them by the middle of this month, and then in October I'll come to you. Yes.
First of all, I really appreciate the fact that you periodically send it out for an RFP. Why just these 4 firms?
Well, I want to send it to people that know the district, that have some understanding of what we do. I have tried a couple other firms in the past and hasn't been too successful. So I don't have a lot of other firms that I'm aware of that have the capabilities and experience to do this type of service. If there's someone that you're aware of down the road that you want me to consider, I'd be happy to.
Well, it's not that, but when I can only speak for financial services. When financial services RFP is put out, there's a database where there's notification. Do you have that for engineering?
There's a database I'm aware of based on my experience in the architectural world, construction management. It's a select list of people in my mind that that are capable of providing the services that we want to the level that we want. And I felt that with 4 firms, I usually go 4 or 5 firms for this, that with that number of firms, we get competitive numbers.
Maybe database was the wrong term. It's a website that you go to and anybody can respond to.
Right, so the reason I don't, I mean, honestly, you could do that and you could have a lot of people spend a lot of time and a lot of money providing proposals and you know, go through a lot of those things, but at the end of the day, I believe the ones that are gonna shake out of the handful that we've had experience with, you'll, I mean, I guarantee I'll be innovative. If I just said, for professional services, as you're aware, we can limit that to a more select group. When it's bidding, it's open to anyone. I've done it that way, and I've actually been involved where there were projects that when I came on board and took over for the person prior to me, it was almost impossible to sort out. They went out for proposal for architects, and they were getting proposals from civil engineers to do architectural work, from structural engineers that wanted to do everything. Some were, I'll provide your civil, but I won't do anything else. I'll provide structure. I'm a guy that does HVAC, and I want to give you a price, but they were all over the place. And, you know, it was a pile from the floor to here. Just really, a lot of people spun their wheels and spent a lot of money providing 5 proposals that we wouldn't even consider. So, I don't know, I guess it's just.
So are you saying professionally that's a poor reflection on us?
I don't like to have professional firms spend, I know what it, from that, being in that life, I know what it takes to prepare books and respond to RFPs. You know.
But they don't have to do it. I mean,
They don't have to do it, but at the same time, I mean, if it's, they're gonna do it and it's not gonna meet.
well, we don't know that, right? So this is 4 people who you know you have a comfort level with. I get that, right? So and basically, you could probably choose any of them and you would feel comfortable moving forward with the projects. But there may be somebody out there that offers a different, mindset on something that we're not thinking of, or you're not thinking of. That's my only concern. It feels a little incestuous to me that it's always these people who.
Well, I think you have to be careful, because I think if you always bring in new people, there's 1.6 million square foot of buildings.
I didn't say always, right? I'm just saying.
But if I bring in somebody new, they know nothing about our facilities. It'll be their first year, it'll be getting to know us, me getting to know them. And that's what happened with the last firm that I used prior to GKO. They came in, they got to know us. They actually knew us a little bit. It didn't go well. And after the first year, I said, I'm gonna have you give me some money back because you performed poorly, and you won't be coming back for your next 2 years. And then I went back out and to GKO. And at that time, I sent proposals to different firms than this. So I did explore probably 3 or 4 different firms that are listed on this list the last time, and I wasn't pleased with the stuff I got back from that group, so that probably is why it went to a more limited group.
No, I would imagine that you're asking your peers in the industry or your contacts, hey, is there anybody out here performing the same services that's doing a great job that we do need to look at, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
It's my understanding too, and I don't know if some of you might remember this better than I do, but when we were renovating Churchville and Holland, we picked 2 different firms and made them go head to head. One project went relatively well, one project was a disaster. So I'm a little jaded from that experience about somebody we don't have confidence in who bids and we try. So, but I think the meetings I went to, I don't know if anybody else, I wasn't on the board then. I was a parent at Churchville, that's why I was interested. But it was to address that, and I guess I'm a little jaded now. I'd rather at least somewhat know the people, because the project that went poorly, in my opinion, was bad. So, unfortunately, it was the good project.
Just my comments, and listen, I do appreciate you going out periodically having a system for rebidding.
So what's the short list of disasters? There was a disaster civil engineer. we had a disaster, we've had some pretty rough HVAC stuff, right?
Those people are not back.
Right. And then.
And we had
another
a CM, we had a kind of a clerk of the works that wasn't fantastic, and we had a person help with summer projects that wasn't great. But that firm happened to use some of the people that were listed up here, which helped make those projects go well. And this time around, I said, well, why bring them back when I can just go right to the people that helped make it right? So that was some of my thought. And I did ask some larger firms from the city the last time around, and the proposals weren't fantastic. So I have entertained other people, Mark. The list isn't as big as a lot of other services. And I just might be, just from my background and knowing who my competitors were at the time, and I know who performed the best. That's just my experience. So I apologize if the list isn't big enough. I can certainly make it bigger.
It's not my point. I just want to make sure that we're exploring everything.
Doug, how many times have you done this since you've been here? This is your third time, right?
It's my third time because it didn't go well last time.
So every time you've done it, that list has been different.
It has. There could be some repeat, but there were different people the last time around, yeah. And some reputable, big, good names, yeah. So at any rate, I hope that I'll get support when I bring this in October for one of the firms, whoever is the apparent low and qualified. And who knows? I mean, maybe some of these guys won't shake out to be where I hope they would be. So we'll see.
I feel like we did some of that too. I mean, I'm remembering what I felt like was a dog and pony show 3 nights of. So I feel like we did it in places other than here. We just didn't do it for summer projects.
Right, not for summer projects.
We just did it with the,
For the middle schools, for the large middle school projects, yeah.
But we did it for something else prior to that, I feel like, also. Again, I'm dating.
They
myself.
were here, I can't remember. That might have been for construction managers,
It
and
was
then we did
good
for architects. We had 2 different kinds.
That's what it was.
Who's good now?
I wasn't here for that.
well, and it certainly was the middle schools, because if you remember, the first recommendation was to work with the construction team you worked with. And I was very vocal about going out for the RFP, and I appreciate that you did it. And that's how we ended up with Schrader and Breslin, thank you. And going to the 2 schools, so, because I don't remember who you were originally recommending, but it doesn't matter.
I don't think I was,
Yeah, but, again, it's always good to reevaluate.
well, if nothing more, if GKO comes back with fees that are as equal to what they had before, and they can stay on board, that'd be great. If the other guys come in and they're better, they're all, in my mind, equal to, so I think we have good competition.
Great.
Service supply bids, I'll be working on the snow and salt in the near future. Emergency generators and air filters will be on the agenda next week. The professional services that I just mentioned will be coming to you next month. Donations, I'm still waiting for Welsh to come back with the sound system donation that was teamed up with the Rolling Hills. They were supposed to get us one so that the rates would be discounted between the 2. I haven't seen it yet. And that is it. Any other questions?
Did you add any more public comment?
Are we adding emergency generators?
We're not. This is basically servicing, testing
Okay.
the generators that we have, changing spark plugs, changing oil, testing.
Every school have one?
Every school has one. Some are much more
Yes. I'll bet.
supportive than others.
Yeah.
Some are old and tired, and in the capital plan, there are actually costs to replace some of those. But until we get past master planning and understand what we're doing, I'm hesitant to come across with any kind of major recommendations on that stuff yet.
So with these, we've had at least 2 HVAC difficulties. So you valiantly worked your way through Churchville, and and it sounds like you're doing it with good now. The thing that Churchville had going in its favor is there was something like loud sounds. There were things that you could look at every microsecond and see the problem was there. GoodNote depends on the ambient air, humidity, and temperature, right?
It comes down to setting all of the base settings in the building management system to the design numbers.
I mean, that's a hypothesis, right? Because where you could end up is that the system just can't do it. It's a poorly designed system. Because you had mentioned the separation between, say a heating element to dehumidify that, you couldn't make that work. And so you've got these control companies, Johnson Controls, you got the contractor that made the system, and you can always go into it saying, well, maybe the controls just aren't wired up right, but it could also be, it's just a bad design. And it takes a while to sort your way through to figure out which world you're in.
We will ultimately get to that and figure out what it is, but right now I have a design team willing to come in and help us evaluate it, so they're not, running and saying, this is exactly what you need, and we did our job, and it's yours, so.
But the control, so the amount of money the control company gets, because, Johnson Controls was just in the.
This is Siemens on this one, just for.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, it's maybe not enough money for them, but in theory, there should be a partnership between the control system and the underlying hardware. And you shouldn't just have to rely on the local HVAC engineer. The controls people should be able to say, you know what, your system just can't.
They came out
there from here.
with BACnet, which was supposed to be the component which made every control guide compatible. If you had BACnet in the system, you could put anything in and they could all talk to each other. Well, BACnet isn't exactly what everybody said it would be. So there are pieces that can't communicate with one another as people had hoped.
I mean, that's easy because you can say, hey, the control system isn't communicating.
I think we're going to start with controls, and I think that by looking at should the outside air that's 70% be changed to 60%?
Right.
Should it be 50%? So the
And-
mix isn't exactly.
And
what's
are you
happening.
able to make that change?
And are we mixing outside air, or is it being confused with return air, and somehow we're not getting the temperatures that we need? So we may need to come back in and do some additional readings, and how do we get our readings? So we're going to go through all of those things to, and
But like
we have
you said-
Aramark assisting with that.
Like you said, you're frustrated that we had a commissioning phase and we still
Sure.
ended up here.
Yeah.
And so with these new buildings, the remedy is, well, we have a new engineer. So we're hoping
We have a
that,
very good engineer that I had experience. I saw them design a building opposite of them. I worked for the owner.
right.
I saw the school come on. I've seen the controls in action, and the building functions well.
Yeah.
I
I mean, this is part of this frustration, right? I mean, we want to be able to open to the world, and then these systems are so complicated, and it's hard to know if someone does good work. And, we're back to using people that basically you vetted through an entire career.
Right.
And it's just frustrating
So-
for those of us who want to open it up to the world, but it's hard.
Well,
to do.
these summer project architects have to list their team, because they come with mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, they come with the structural engineer, they come with the civil engineer. So anything we do is under their umbrella. So each one of those firms that we've asked to give us a price will list an entire team of people. So it's open to everyone in that regard. They can all call them and they can say, let us give you a number, we want to work for the district. So they can competitively bid those 5 professionals under each one of their proposals, and then we'll see who their teams are. And that will also help us choose. If somebody has in my mind, a dog that we've worked with in the past, I'll say, I'm a little bit worried. So,
Excellent.
thank you guys. Thank you.
Stop.
It's supposed to be fast.
No public comment.
Good.
No public comment. Meeting adjourned.